Hi YouTubers, welcome to the Budget Outlaws channel. My name is Dan and I have a fun project to share with you all. I first fell in love with outlaw Porsches when I read a Hot Rod article about Bill Simpson's bright red 302 powered 914 way back in June of 1976. Fast forward 42 years later to June of 2018 and my son Andrew sends me a link to a LS6 powered 914 that needed work. Now Andrew sends me several of these every year, but the timing is usually off and it just doesn't work. But this time I had recently sold a classic 72 El Camino and money was burning in my pocket. So I'd also just rolled my current race car, street car, a BMW 330. And this car was just too much to pass up. One thing I should mention is that Andrew also has an outlaw Porsche 914, and he bought that as his first car. We'll get more into that later, but it started out with an original 4-cylinder, then a V8 swap, and now an Audi 1.8 turbo swap. Getting back to my car, some history on that car. It was acquired by Bill, who was determined to build it into a street and track monster. Long before LS swaps were popular with 914, Bill installed a 500 horsepower LS6 and a Porsche 915 Transaxle, and thus started the trip down the rabbit hole. Bill spent some big money and many hours installing the high horsepower, custom interior, custom wide body, 930 suspension and brakes. He built an extremely fast car that was very beautiful. He recorded quarter-mile times of 11.3 seconds at 132 mile an hour and top speeds in excess of 170. Bill fought nagging rocker arm problems as well as transaxle problems and sold the car around 2009. Enter Paul. Paul bought the car and spent much time and money ironing out the issues. Bill had already swapped the 215 Transaxle with a 930 Transaxle that could handle over 700 horsepower, but it had problems. Bill had it rebuilt and repaired and also did many other changes to reduce the problems with the rocker arms. He owned the car for 10 years, and over the time he made many improvements to the car, including adding orange graphics. Around the 9th year, it was involved in a solo accident that pretty much destroyed the front end. It was for sale at that time for about $45,000 before the wreck. So I corresponded with Paul to see if we could make some sort of a deal, but I could see there was problems with the sale. The first gotcha was that the car was located in New Jersey and I lived in Oregon. Most people would shy away from a long-distance sale like this. However, we had an advantage. Andrew and I had been tracking this car for some 15 years on the 914 forums. We knew what went into it years ago, as well as the trials and tribulations over the years. We also knew that people that had seen the car, worked on the car, and knew its current owner. The second gotcha was that I didn't have enough money. He wasn't asking a lot for it at the time, but it was still more than I had. But I had the desire to make the car whole again, and that's what Paul was looking for, to see the car back on the road. Other buyers could only see the mountain of high-dollar parts on the car that could be parted out for more than the sales price. I, on the other hand, could only see that it required lots of labor and in some parts to make it work again. And my son and I worked out a plan based on the damage with a fallback that it could become a full tubed car if need be. It already had an 8-point chassis, or 8-point cage, and that kept the damage limited to the front end, not wiping out the whole chassis. Anyways, Paul was ready to sell, and he took my offer, and the deal was done. So we made the deal. I arranged a shipper to pick up the car, and we put the money in limbo. The shipper took them some time to get arranged, and when they finally showed up, they weren't going to pick up the car due to the damage. But the seller slipped him a 20, and suddenly his demeanor changed. I had sent him pictures, so this shouldn't have been a surprise, but anyway, he loaded it up and I released the money, and now I own the car. But then I had to endure 14 days of not knowing where my car was, and that was the longest 14 days of my life. I highly recommend a GPS tracker for these long distance sales. It apparently got handed off to 4 different trucks, and on the 3rd truck, it was even in my town just a few days earlier than I received it. But for some reason, he didn't have my address or phone number. How does that happen? And what was he going to do? Drive around town and look for someone to flag him down? Anyways, after many phone calls, I managed to get it here without significant further damage. Finally, I got the call I was waiting for. The driver was 20 minutes away. This time he had it on a flatbed, which was good because they were never going to get the car carrier up my driveway, much less on my street or anywhere close. Now I was getting excited. I can remember my wife's first comment upon seeing the car. "Did you know it was going to be like this?" "Yes, honey, I did." The driver was nice, and I held off roasting him for the sins of the other drivers. Hey, I had my car. As I unloaded it, the first I noticed were that the front tires were flat and the battery was dead. The car ran when it was loaded, so I was hoping someone didn't unload it along the way and decide to do donuts in the nearest parking lot in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. I pumped up the tires and put in a fresh battery, and there I proceeded to take my very first drive. It looked and sounded like parts were going to fall off it, but I did it anyways. My wife held the camera and I had another defender. I wasn't going to miss filming its first drive. I started the engine, fired it right up, and it sounded like a bucket of bolts. Apparently it wasn't as right as rain, but it ran and drove and popped and stopped and turned, although a bit more left than right. It was something I could work with. Since I had a long driveway, I did my first burnout in my LS-powered 914. I spent the previous 2 limbo weeks looking for body parts and the fiberglass needed for the front. I was blessed on both accounts. The fiberglass was still being made by the original producer, and someone on the forum took pity on my dilemma and gave me a very nice body that was collecting dust. Again, long distance was a problem here, and as soon as the car arrived, I knew it was real. The wife and I made the road trip and picked up not only the spare body, but also the fiberglass front end on the same trip. So I had the makings of a complete car. I've named it Morpheus and intend to take it deep into the rabbit hole. To take the red pill, this series will tell the story of putting the car back on the road and learning lots in the process. Thanks for watching this, and please like, subscribe, and join us for more adventures on this car and many others.